All right. I think we are live. G'day, everyone. How are we? How are we feeling about China? I hope everyone is having a great Saturday and looking forward to another sprint race weekend to kick the season off. First of 6 sprint races for 2025. So hope you guys watching are all very well. Scott, Matt, good to see you both in the chat. Hope you're having a great weekend so far. But yeah, lots to get through in the next couple hours. I might cut the stream a little short, probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes before sprint race today, just with a couple of things on my Saturday day where I am in Australia. So yeah, I still think plenty of time to go through all the questions, all the decisions, kind of what that means for our fantasy teams this week. So looking forward to doing that with all of you guys today. Nothing too crazy, hopefully, from practice. So I might kick things off and go over to the practice times before. God, I'm on a laptop screen as well, just a single laptop screen. So I'm going to be a bit slow navigating between the windows, but hopefully you guys can be patient with me today. Zerk, Wanra, I think that's, hopefully I'm saying that right. Big Boss, Sarah, Crazy Canuck, Michael, how are all of you? Great to have you on the stream today. And yes, great point on the Williams breach update, because personally, I have no idea yet what that means for them for the sprint qualifying. It seems like they're going to be disqualified, but that should not affect the sprint race itself. I've got my team up, which we can get to in a minute, but I'll pull up the sprint qualifying times and we can jump through that. I will have on my Twitter homepage, hopefully an update on Williams when that comes through. If I'm not mistaken, it should be in the next... I think they're in the stewards room right now. I think it was 11:30 Sydney time, 8:30 Shanghai time. Keep me honest if that's not the case. But we should have an update on Williams pretty soon. My gut feeling is that nothing from sprint qualifying will really affect the sprint race. Probably likely Albon and Sainz, if there's any kind of penalty assigned, they end up just starting at the back, which for Williams owners is a pretty good thing. More overtakes and positions gained for you guys holding Albon or the Williams constructor. Tom, how are you, mate? Good to see you in the chat. Thanks for dropping in, Theo. Hope you're well. So yeah, let's quickly go through sprint qualifying times. I know there's probably a lot you guys already know, so we're not going to spend a great deal going through everything that happened yesterday. But I think the biggest takeaway for me was Hamilton on pole. I was pretty impressed with Lewis taking pole. I didn't honestly foresee anything quite like that. Less than 200ths ahead of Max, but I think Lewis and Max on the front row in China is going to be a fun watch today. And then McLaren a little bit further down. I will be honest, I missed the sprint qualifying, or I think I saw the first part of SQ1 and a little bit of SQ2, but I missed SQ3 entirely. So I'm not sure if Lando just didn't get a good lap in. It seems, half a second off pole doesn't quite feel like his potential, kind of what you'd expect from Lando Norris. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he clocks up a couple of passes on George and Charles. But, I think Ferrari fills me with a lot of confidence. I was a little bit skeptical heading into today holding Ferrari. I'm probably leaning towards sticking with them for one more week at least and sticking with Mercedes and avoiding the McLaren constructor. But I know that comes with a lot of risk because we know how good Oscar and Lando are. So I think McLaren are definitely, with Lando starting a bit further back, got a couple of extra, as I said, overtakes and positions gained for them to rack up today. Antonelli, Tsunoda, Albon, Stroll, no real surprises for me in the top 10, to be honest. Stroll again beating out Fernando Alonso. I'm likely going to be with Stroll for one more week unless I went down the McLaren Mercedes path. I think Stroll's great value. in terms of that price gain upside, but at the same time, not so sure his luck's going to continue forever. So crossing my fingers that the stroller coaster is a fun ride for one more weekend. And then Sainz in 13th, probably the biggest surprise for me in sprint qualifying. I think, though, again, sets Williams up nicely for a few extra passes on track today. And we know that overtakes, positions gained, etc. Pretty good for Carlos Sainz and Williams, certainly for those teams that are in the top half of the grid and typically make their way forward. So, yeah, all in all, pretty standard sprint qualifying, I would say, for the most part. I won't talk about Lawson because that was unfortunately not ideal for him. I tell you what, I'll see if I can get the FIA documents bot up on my Twitter. So if anything comes through on Williams, we will be able to see it, or at least I'll just have it here so I can refresh it. I'll pull my team up for you guys as well, for those of you that want to see it. That's currently what it is, but there will be a couple of changes. But anyway, I might get back to the chat to answer a few of your questions. Shane, good to see you, mate. I love the write-up you did for your F1 fantasy team today. So everyone check out FPL Veteran on Twitter for a nice little read Shane did. Glenn, good to see you, mate. Hope you're well. Yeah, let's get some questions fired up because already a few really good ones coming in. I think Limitless, very viable, Theo. So I love the idea of that. Let's start with you, Mike. So around the Williams decision, if they're starting at the back, would you sacrifice Piastri to get Albon and Antonelli as the budget wouldn't allow for Piastri, Albon and McLaren? Would you sacrifice Piastri to get Albon? I guess then in that case, you're putting the 2x on Antonelli. Do we think Kimi Antonelli scores 32 points again this time around? Maybe. I think, Mike, your question, I really like it. I think it kind of comes down to how you want to approach a wild card for this weekend. If you're on the wild card, or even on a team like Piastri, Albon and McLaren, or Antonelli, Albon and McLaren. If you're focusing on pure budget, then I think the Antonelli and Albon lineup works better. But I think Piastri for me is a much longer term hold. I mean, we might well hold Antonelli for a few more weeks for people running with him, but I think Piastri for me, I've been saying it since the start of the season, is a driver that is a set and forget for me. I don't have to worry about him in my lineup. I know he will be there week in, week out. There'd have to be some severe McLaren drop-off for me to suddenly move away from Oscar, or if I'm pivoting into Lando Norris. But right now, Oscar's probably one of the drivers that I just don't really see myself changing. So for that reason, Mike, I think I like the Piastri option. Ian, thanks for the update on Lando. So he messed up his flying lap, so would have been on the front row. That makes more sense. So I think McLaren should be well positioned for a few extra overtakes from Lando coming from 6th. Birdman, locking in McLaren, Williams, Piastri, double Haas, Hulk, Albon. I think that looks great. And update on the stewards. We'll probably, I agree with you, Theo, probably in the next half an hour. If I'm not mistaken, they're with Williams right now. Do we know what's happening with Williams? Yeah, penalty, not sure yet, Isaac. Hadjar or Doohan? That's an interesting one. I think today I'm probably just going to be jumping around a lot. Not a lot of structure to this one, but that's the beauty of chaotic deadline streams. So I think I've always really been on Isaac Hadjar over Doohan. I'll reset these markers for my team because I was fiddling around with mine earlier. So although Doohan, projected to score in the Fantasy Tools simulations 4 points compared to Hadjar's 1.7, I think with the exception of obviously that formation lap crash last week for Isaac, I've always been pretty impressed by him so far. He looked really quick in practice last week. I think he was 6th in FP2, P11 in qualifying last week. I do apologize. I can't remember how he did. He was around, Bortoletto. That's what I was going to say. Him, Bortoletto and Doohan were all grouped, around the same mark. I think I'm just excited a bit more about Isaac Hadjar if I had to choose between the two. Doohan also ran into the gravel yesterday as well. So I think he's just feeling a bit shaky as a Doohan owner. I think Doohan's probably a priority transfer for me this week alongside the likes of Alonso, perhaps Sainz. Sainz will need a huge week to increase in price. So yeah, Doohan for me is one of the highest priority transfers out. Where else are we in the chat? Sorry, guys. The Signs' seat was unscrewed and was wobbling around. Ruth Buscombe talked about McLaren's qualifying strategy on Instagram story. I don't follow Ruth, but she is one of the brightest minds in the Formula One world. Jar again, are you trying to lose? Well, I don't think I'll win this year. If I finish first, that would be a 1 in a million, maybe 1 in 2.5 million or whatever the team count is. So I think for me, the reason I'm going Hadjar is just simply because it's with the way my team's set up, it's either him. I essentially have to keep Bortoletto and to move off Hadjar to get Behrman in one of the two transfer moves. I'm thinking it probably feels like Hadjar sticks for me. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a great option though. Matt says McLaren, Williams, Oscar Albon, Hulkenberg, Behrman with no chips played. I think that team looks great. What's the latest on Williams? Still nothing. Hi. Is it crazy to run McLaren and kick? Isaac asks. I don't think it's insane, certainly compared to weeks prior. And it's funny you say that, Isaac. The world number 2 who finished in F1 Fantasy last year, I was speaking to him a couple hours ago, Porsche F1 on Twitter, for those of you that are on the F1 Fantasy Twitter community. He is actually thinking about running Kick Sauber this week, simply just because of the thresholds that need to be met to get another price gain. But I think that's contingent on Williams not participating in the sprint race, which seems unlikely to me. So I think Kick's fine, but I'd actually have them over. Is it VCarb? What's the team that I think it's VCarb. We'll go to my asset tier ranking for this week. If you guys can see it, hang on, I'll need to stop sharing the screen. So that was the video in this. Sorry, this was in my final thoughts video. I've changed it again slightly since my final thoughts, simply because of the Ferrari improvement on Friday. But in terms of the question, I forget already what was asked. Goodness me. The question around Kick Sauber, I have them ahead of Alpine and I have them ahead of VCarb, just simply because the thresholds are lower for Sauber to reach. Is this a week for strong budget building at the expense of points? Piastri, Albon, Hulkenberg, Antonelli, Stroll with Williams and Haas. I think, Kyle, I like the question around your pure budget. For me, I've always been someone that personally likes to go for a bit of a hybrid between the two. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong reason or a wrong strategy here, and building budget is really important at the start of the year. I think if you going Williams or Haas is fine. I think going both, you're really leaving yourself open to more DNFs, which are more common in the midfield teams. So I think, if you can maybe move Antonelli around out for McLaren or something like that, I'd probably prioritize McLaren Williams or McLaren Haas if you wanted to go down that road. Would you consider Russell? Yeah, absolutely would. I've got him third on my list here, as you can see. So I think he's perfectly fine if you're going down a McLaren Mercedes Russell strategy. Hadjar McLaren Williams sounds fine. What a home race Australia was. It absolutely was, wasn't it? Can you explain what you mean by develop budget? Yeah, so I would direct you in the first instance towards Rain Fantasy and Pop Man, Tom. They've done 2 really excellent videos on building budget and increasing your team value. The priority here earlier in the season is to focus obviously on points, but to continue to build your team value as much as possible. So in the later stages of the season, assuming you are an engaged F1 fantasy manager, and if you're watching this, I'm assuming you are, is to go from 100 million right now for a lot of us or thereabouts to 115, 120, 125 million. And obviously with that extra budget, you're able to afford more premium assets. So right now, some teams can get Piastri, Albon, McLaren, Williams. Later in the season, you might be able to get Piastri, Leclerc, Albon, Williams, or Norris, Albon, McLaren, Mercedes, something like that. So it's just simply about accruing value now so you can afford better assets later in the season. Stuck between Behrman and Sonoda. I think I like Behrman, but I don't think it's all that close. Signs in Hajar to Albon and Behrman or Bortoletto. I'd go, the Albon and Behrman combination, Hayden. I think the wild card, thinking Haas and Ocon or Williams and Bortoletto. I think for budget, Haas and Ocon. For points, Williams and Bortoletto. What's that? If I have to do Hajar and Bortoletto, should I wildcard? Will asks, not necessarily. I have both right now, and I'm probably going to prioritize one of them, but not both of them. I think for me, you can see my screen now, hopefully. I think for me, I'm just going to have to eat the price drops for Bortoletto for 1 more week. So that's just kind of how it goes for my team right now. And then McLaren in probably a week or two's time. If I have Doohan, Hadjar and Bortoletto, should I wildcard? Yeah, I think if you've got all three, I'd recommend a wildcard. But if you've just got 2 of Doohan, Hadjar and Bortoletto, you could probably get away without it. Planning to run Piastri, Stroll, Ocon, Hulkenberg and Asterix. Struggling who the best from Gasly, Tsunoda or Behrman is. I mean, like for like Gasly, between Gasly, Tsunoda and Behrman. But obviously I think that would implicate the constructor you pick as well, George. No, Grant, I'm not going all out on budget. This week, I'm trying to get some kind of hybrid. How much money have you got? I've got, Michael, if you're asking me, I have 100.3. So let's see then. 100.3. That's my budget. Is Ferrari Mercedes better than McLaren and another constructor? I think Ferrari Mercedes, it's a tough one, Lucas, because I think Ferrari Mercedes is good. I've got a lot of questions to catch up on, guys. You're absolutely crushing it in the chat today. Ferrari Mercedes, I think it's going to be close. Looking at the team calculator, Ferrari Mercedes is on the bottom right here, 124, 125, and McLaren Williams is 27 plus 94 is 121. So it's, 124 plus 121. I don't think there's much in it. What do you think of Ferrari, Mercedes, Behrman, Ocon, Piastri, Hulkenberg, Hadjar? Yeah, Naveen, that sounds great. Dropped to 98.7 of budget and decided to play wildcard. Michelle, I think that looks great. Wildcard, definitely. If you're in the 96s to 98s, even 99s, I think wildcard seems like perfectly fine. Aeroblade, likely doing wildcard. Rest of the team, Norris, Behrman, Stroll, Hulkenberg with McLaren. I think Aeroblade, I think I've said this before, Haas and Ocon for budget, Williams and Bortoletto for points. Why Ferrari and McLaren as the front runners? With Ferrari and McLaren, why not Limitless? Nuno, I think because on my team, I've got 2 assets that are bound to drop again in value. Can I refresh this? Is the screen going to wig out on me or is it going to be sensible? It's going to wig out on me. So let me just readjust the screen quickly so I can get that up. Sorry, being on a laptop is awfully cumbersome, so I do have to adjust from time to time. So why not Limitless? Because I've got these 2 duds here that are dropping in 0.6 again after China. So I'm kind of, even though expecting Hulk and Stroll to go up, they're going to eat into that potential price gain. And on your Limitless, you get the price changes of your non-Limitless team. What about McLaren, Ferrari, 2 times Albon? Bremby, I don't mind it. I think you've just got to be conscious of the fact that putting the 2 times on Antonelli signs or Albon comes with a little bit of risk. Why not Verstappen? He's too expensive. Jean Thomas, I have 100.3 and only 2 drivers that will drop after the Chinese Grand Prix. Would you recommend Limitless? I mean, I have 2 drivers that will drop after the Chinese Grand Prix and I'm not using Limitless. But I still wouldn't fault you for doing that if you wanted to. Alrighty. Where are we? Limitless in China too soon? Absolutely not too soon. Mike, I've got lucky with cash. I'm usually this season on budget building quite the opposite. But on Yuki, I don't mind Yuki Tsunoda. I've had a few questions from Yuki. And do you guys think Do you guys, let's put this one. This will be a quick poll because I don't personally love the idea of Yuki Tsunoda. I don't think his ownership's going to be that high this weekend. And I want to pivot over to the team calculator. I think his sims was 7 points, not even 3 points. I honestly, I don't even think Yuki Tsunoda's worth a poll, but I'll do it. Yuki Tsunoda, will you own him this week? I also think, it's team dependent. I hate the cliche, but how do I hide that? Alrighty, where's my mark in the chat? Yeah, Jim, love the Ocon versus Stroll debate. I think Stroll's good. I think Ocon's good too. I have a full line of drivers that dropped. Piastri, Sainz, Hajar, Doohan and Tsunoda. Desktop bodybuilding. Love that name. I'd probably wildcard, mate. Just to protect your team value, not because the drivers are terrible. There's a lot to... Do we know anything about Williams possibly getting disqualified? Knowing you guys in the chat who are faster and much smarter than I am, it's probably likely you'll find out about this before I will. But we will keep refreshing the FIA documents bot just to see if there's anything on Williams. Usually Chris Medlin's good for a tweet instantly as well. Are you using wildcard? I am not using wildcard. Thanks, Lucas. Very kind words. Tsunoda or Behrman? Behrman for the price. I think you can do a bit more with him than you could do than going Tsunoda. Like, what if you went Behrman over Tsunoda? What can you do with the extra 2 million? Because Behrman's 6.7? 6.7? 6.1. He was 6.7 last week. Like, what can you do going Behrman for 6.1 over Tsunoda at 9? That's 2.9. Like, I feel like that's a good upgrade from a backmarker to Stroll or Hulkenberg. Can you explain why they're dropping a price again? Because the game bases the pricing on a 3-week rolling average. So if you have a DNF, it's going to hurt your chances of, or a driver or a constructor's chances of rising in price the subsequent week. I haven't yet done a video on this because I've been on holidays and I've been kind of non-stop the last couple of weeks. So my plan is to get one out between China and Japan. But if you do want to watch really good budget building videos, Tom, Pop Pan Man F1 on YouTube and Rain Fantasy have both done really good content around that. Jeremy, how are you, mate? Good to see you. Do you know if there are mini leagues this year, like the halfway point league and the single race leagues? Silence in a yes, there should be. I don't know which races they will be doing it for this time. My guess is they will do a second half of the year league. So from Zandvoort again, I think Belgium's the last race in the first half of the season. And they may do one-offs. They've done a Vegas league for the last 2 years. I think that will come back. I also think there might be one for maybe one of the rookies. We had a Zhou mini league in China last year. There might be one for Gabriel Bortoleto in Brazil. I'm obviously hypothesizing, but it could be possible. Just wait and see. What's that stat website called? Marshall, that is f1fantasytools.com, the absolute best fantasy resource in the game. They can help you go through budget building, which I think is a great little segue into what I want to cover next and what this means for discussing my rationale for my team and perhaps your teams as well. Thoughts on wildcard? Piastri, Hulk, Ocon, Stroll, Behrman, McLaren, Williams. Yeah, ATL, I think that looks good to me. How is the stream going? I think it's going all right. 387 of you in the chat. Great to have you here. Thank you again for joining, guys. Please also show some love to the stream. Throw a like if that is not too much of an ask. I know it can be quite cumbersome, but a single click of the button of your mouse would obviously be a welcome change. Not a welcome change. Absolutely not welcome change. You guys love and support this channel so much. A welcome and appreciated gesture is what I mean to say. Can you explain why they're dropping in price again? I think I answered that. Gasly and Behrman or Ocon and Behrman? Probably Ocon hasn't got as much to go. Doesn't need to score as much to get the maximum price rise compared to Gasly. So I'm going to say Ocon. Aston Martin or Racing Bulls? I would say I'm going to base this off the price rise metric. I'm going to say Aston Martin. Rob, I think I answered that one around the mini leagues. If I've missed your question, please drop it in the chat again because there have been so many wonderful contributions. So apologies if I've missed it. Tom, Yuki is in my wildcard team if I go for it. Just waiting for Williams news. Pop Power Man F1, the OG F1 fantasy YouTuber, is in the chat. So show some love to Tom. Worth taking a minus 20 point hit to build budget and save wildcard to pivot back to a premium team later down the track. I mean, you could. I think minus 20, and Tom, funnily enough, was also talking about this when I watched the second half of his stream, half an hour ago, was that I think minus 20 is probably the threshold for me to deviate from taking hits to going down the wildcard path. I think you can certainly earlier in the season justify a minus 10, certainly to preserve value. But I do think the minus 20s, the minus 30s, it kind of gets a bit sketchy there. And for me as well, I've been burnt so many times, not just in F1 fantasy, but also in fantasy Premier League and other fantasy sports, where taking these hits, the more you take, the less they pay off. So I'd be reluctant to go beyond a minus 10 and probably just deploy the wild card. Chat is on fire. I hope so. You guys are super. Alex is asking, how can I start into the season with the best team, and how many times can the chips be used? Every chip you can deploy once, and the best team, I would direct you to F1 Fantasy Tools. So speaking of that, F1 Fantasy Tools budget building, it's a tool they rolled out not even 48 hours ago, probably not even 24 hours ago. What this shows us is, for those of you not familiar with this analytical insight, is the point scoring thresholds that drivers and constructors need to score each week to change in price. We'll start, as an example, we'll start with Lando Norris. Lando had a really good weekend in Australia, won the race, fastest lap driver of the day, all that good stuff. So for him to go up another 0.3 million in China, a great performance or a great metric for a price increase, he needs to score more than minus 23, which is a DNF. So Lando has to avoid a DNF and he's going to rise in price again. I mean, you could say this for a lot of drivers and constructors, but it goes to show when you've got these negative thresholds, you don't actually need to score that much to rise in price again, which is kind of how the 3 race rolling average is structured. To the contrary, someone like Gabriel Bortoleto or any of these drivers down here that DNF'd have a higher threshold to meet to rise in price. So Bortoleto, Hadjar Doohan, Alonso Sainz, Lawson, if you're prioritizing budget at this early stage of the season, which most of us should be, I think, we're not prioritizing, but obviously keeping that in mind, I do think these guys down here, I wouldn't be running more than one asset this week if you can avoid it. If you have 3 or more, I'd absolutely consider using the wild card based on your team in Australia. If you have 2, I'd probably think about using a transfer to move off one of them. And as I've said, I'll probably be having Bortoleto for another week, unfortunately. But this is a very useful tool to obviously help gauge your appetite for A, how you think the drivers and constructors will do, and B, your risk appetite for carrying these assets through consecutive weeks, whether it's through rises or falls. All right, back to the chat. I think I lost my mark. Thanks, mate. Like button has been smashed. Thank you, Scotty. Thank you, Scotty. Hi, McLaren, Williams, and Behrman, or Ferrari, Williams, and Albon. I would go... Evan, if you're going for points, I'd go... Honestly, I'd probably go McLaren, Williams, and Behrman. I'm only not on that lineup this week simply because it would take a wild card for me to get to that. So I'm content with not going that. But I think McLaren Williams is going to be an awfully popular constructor pairing this week. New Hamilton looks comfortable on the course. Crowd likes him. Could he get a driver of the day and a win? I think he could be in with a good shot at the sprint race. I'd probably not expect him to be that close to contending for the win in the Grand Prix. But I think it's probably not for me right now. It's kind of an awkward price because you can get Piastri for a lower price, a lower threshold to meet for a price rise, and in a better car. So I think, sure, Hamilton has that driver of the day upside, but right now I'm not convinced by it. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for the love in the chat. I've got a few more. Show some love to Leapsfrog in the chat. World number 1 last year in F1 Fantasy, an absolute generational talent in this fantasy sport. So, Leaps is definitely worth the time of day on the F1 Fantasy Tools Discord and on Twitter. Jeremy, Norris, Albon, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Hadjar, McLaren, RB. We'll probably just swap in a Haas for RB. Yeah, that's fine, mate. I think that looks good to me. If people are wildcarding on the second race to save value, then something is wrong with the pricing. Casual players will not keep playing. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Toro. I think the pricing model, although it has changed, do I think it's better than the old one? Come back to me in a few weeks. I think the fact that though we had 6 DNFs in Australia has really exacerbated an extreme situation with all of these price drops and negative scores. It's also not helped by the minus 20 DNF penalty, which, as many of you will agree, or at least I think would agree, is just too harsh in F1 Fantasy. It just unfairly penalizes a lot of decisions which shouldn't really come down to luck, but do anyway. But notwithstanding that, I do think if they reduced it to minus 10, I don't think the extremes of what we felt last week in the price changes would be quite as severe. Interesting thing to note though, Toro, is that last year was also the second race of the season, was the biggest wildcard use throughout the 24 races. So second year in a row, but I think the percentage of wildcard users this year will be a lot higher than last year. And anything on Williams? Excuse me. I don't think so. What's Luke Smith's? There's an update. Nico Hulkenberg set to start the sprint race from the pit lane after suspension setup changes in Park Ferme. He was due to start 19th anyway, but as an Hulkenberg owner for this week, I will absolutely take that to the bank for the extra position gained. If he can even do so. Excuse me. I should know where the mute button is, but I wasn't quick enough to do that. All right, back to the chat, guys. I want to make sure I've got to as many questions as possible. Ewan is also live shortly, so do check his stream out. There are plenty of talented F1 fantasy content creators out there. With Piastri, Hulk, Stroll, Albon, McLaren, would you choose Haas and Ocon or Williams and Hadjar? I think I've seen that question a few times. For points, Williams and Hadjar. For budget building, Haas and Ocon, Seema. Are there two drivers of the day on sprint weekends? No, just the main race, Takuya. Is anyone doing the Limitless chip? Yeah, actually, great question, Ted. I'm going to put that as a poll. I haven't ended the other poll, but it doesn't look like many more than 30% had Yuki. I still think Yuki's going to be solid. I won't have space for him in my team, but I do think he could be a sneaky good pick this weekend. Actually, I'm going to... Which chip are you using this weekend? Oop. I got that wrong. I'm a rookie when it comes to polls. Start a poll. Add an option. Are we going to do Limitless? Wildcard? Nothing. I think there'll be quite a few wildcarders in the chat though from the messages I'm getting. Gasly or Stroll? Ryan, I think I'm going to say Stroll, but only because of the threshold being lower. Stroll has to get greater than or equal to -5 to rise the maximum. Gasly has to score 13. So I think just simply that reason. I think Gasly is a much better driver, but this pricing model means Stroll is a better option this weekend in F1 Fantasy. Are you using wildcard? I'm not using wildcard. Hydrate, my guy, hydrate. I will definitely try and stay hydrated. If you activate wildcard after taking a -10, does it get rid of the -10? I believe it does. As does Limitless as well. How is the chip going? The chip poll going? Nothing. 48%. Limitless 11. Wildcard 41. I thought wildcard might be higher. Notwithstanding, I think there'll be a few crashes today. Midfield mountains and the back markers will pay off. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Currently, my thoughts are McLaren, Aston, Norris, Stroll, Hulk, Ocon, Behrman, the former world number 1 and defending champ. Andrew says, just got to go Norris for the points with the best budget builders. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, mate. I genuinely think Norris, McLaren, I think F1 Fantasy tips around Norris, McLaren last week, and he did really well. I think that's a safe baseline of points. The thing I'm not so sure about, me personally, I think different people will have different opinions on this. Norris is by far and away the best fantasy asset 1-for-1. Like, if budget wasn't an option, I'd be picking Norris every single day of the week. I'm just, aside from Williams, not overly ecstatic about any of the other constructors in the B tier. So I think Piastri can cover him, but maybe not the full complement of points. But yeah, the best budget builders, mate. I think they're nice, but you shouldn't be taking advice from me. I should be taking advice from you, Andrew. Welcome to my team, Hulk. Glenn says, yeah, I think Hulk's a really high buy this weekend for me. Guillaume, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry about that. You had a rotten week, lost 2 million in budget, 50 points. I think you weren't the only one though. A lot of people had Hadjar doing signs. Can you afford getting Piastri, Albon, Hulk, Stroll, Hadjar with McLaren and Williams? I can, Eminem, but I won't be doing that this week. Arbujin, good to see you at the Australian Grand Prix, my man. One F1 fantasy connoisseur who caught up with Rain and I in on Friday, I think it was, in Australia. So much love to you. Would you use -10 or wildcard? I think that's team dependent. Kolochi, I think it's probably -10's fine this weekend. Depends on obviously the number of assets that are sinking in value. Stroll or Albon this weekend? I'm going to say Stroll. Oh, 1-for-1? No, Albon. 1-for-1, Albon. Can you please explain the charts again? Yeah, Andrew, absolutely. So I think I'm catching up in the chat a little bit too. So I'm feeling good about that. Just want to make sure I'm getting to all of your questions first and foremost. So how this works is these price threshold or point thresholds, I should say, in green or black or red is what the driver needs to score to change in price to the corresponding column. So the example I used before was Lando Norris. He needs to score equal to or greater than -23 points to meet the maximum price gain increase in his tier, the A tier. So I think for drivers that have, or constructors that have negative thresholds to reach, they become very attractive options, hence the green highlight. For those in red, typically drivers that had DNFs or pretty bad races last week, they have a much higher threshold to reach to increase in price simply because of the 3-week rolling average. And so if you have DNFs, it obviously hurts your average and you need to score more points in subsequent weeks to obviously make up that deficit. And to the contrary, if you have great weeks, you have a bit of buffer to fall back on and don't necessarily need to have a 10 or 20 or 30 point week, particularly for those midfield drivers. So for Hulk, for Stroll, Albon, Ocon, Behrman, these are small thresholds that are very achievable on sprint weekends, which is why I really like all of these guys here. Same goes for the constructors. What team would you build with Limitless? Oh, it's almost as if you were wondering what was on the screen behind. And that is this. I'll throw this up for just a little bit. So why are you not using the Limitless chip this weekend? I'm not choosing to use it because I have Hadjar and Bortoletto, and on Limitless, you get the price changes of your pre-Limitless team. So my team from Australia, even though I've got Hulk and Stroll, I think those potential price increases are going to be offset by Bortoletto and Hadjar. So it almost feels like I'm making net zero or net negative price gains. My approach here would be for my team personally, I'm going to try and wildcard the week before Limitless for my team in Miami and hopefully get 2 weeks of budget growth out of that team. I think by that time we'll have a pretty good idea of the rolling averages and where we think the drivers and constructors need to score to increase in price. So I will be running a budget building focused team for those 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Any news on Williams? None that I've seen, but as I've said, you guys will be across that detail before I get to it. If you make transfers then activate Limitless, you will gain budget from the transfers you made. If you activate Limitless, sorry, what was the question? If you make transfers and activate Limitless, you will gain budget from the transfers you made. If you make any transfers and then activate Limitless, those transfers you make will reset. Can I make team adjustments to avoid losing value and then use Limitless afterwards? Unfortunately, you can't. IDK, Homie, Apoorva. Hi, Rob. I'm going with Mercedes, Ferrari, Piastri, Bortoleto, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Behrman. Similar team to me with a transfer in hand for Japan. Do you think it's good enough for this week? Yep, absolutely. I'm pretty much going to go down that same route. I have Bortoleto, Ocon, and Hadjar from the last week. What chip do I use to reset these three? You can't... I think Crazy Canuck, if you want to move away from those three, I just suggest activating Wildcard. But you could probably also just use your 2 transfers as well, potentially. Recovering from 11 points. Oh, Jonathan, I'm sorry, my friend. And budget loss. McLaren, Ferrari, Albon, Tsunoda, Behrman, Hadjar, Doohan. Oh my God, that was rough. 11 points. You would have scored more than 11 points with McLaren, unless this is your team for this week, in which case it looks good. Is it worth taking a -10 to upgrade Stroll to Albon or Piastri, Ocon, Behrman, Hulkenberg? Stroll is good enough for the weekend, and I don't want to take the minus points. I don't think a Stroll Albon swap for 10 points is worth it, in my opinion. Are you going to replace Hadjar with Behrman because of the budget building? Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi. I absolutely will be. What about Ferrari and Williams as constructors? Great question. So my thought process here is, I think if you're going Ferrari Williams, I can see why maybe an option. I'm personally not that excited about it, simply because for 3 million more, you could just move to McLaren, where I think the price gain and points upside is significantly higher. I'm just going to throw this up on the screen here so you guys can see my thought process. But if I went Ferrari Williams, right? I'm just using a very general example here to answer the question asked by DG10 is, I want to make sure you guys are seeing the screen here as well. Ferrari Williams gets you about 200 points just using the best available assets. And I wouldn't even be convinced that Lawson's a great asset either. Let's say 200 points for the sake of this argument. If we went to a McLaren Williams, hang on. Why is it? That doesn't seem right. Let's reset the filters just quickly. Oh, it's because it's my team one. We don't want that. Let's try. Sorry, I'm going a long way around answering a question. McLaren, I just think, in short, McLaren Williams is a much stronger build. A McLaren Williams will get you 220 to 230, and the Ferrari Williams is probably about 200. So DG10, I hopefully think that answers your question. Chad, how are you, mate? I suggest 2x Lawson for this weekend, brother. Big time upside, mate. You're just gonna I think you should make that decision, mate, so you can win the mini league again. Thanks for dropping by though, mate. Appreciate it. Ice Monkey, I will switch from Piastri, Hulkenberg, Behrman, Ocon, Hadjar, Ferrari, Mercedes to Norris. Yep, I think that to Norris, Williams, McLaren. Yep, that sounds good. I'd go Stroll over Ocon as well. What's your lineup? I'll throw it back up, which is kind of not ideal. This is probably what I'm going to run, and I will move out Behrman for Hadjar. But a couple of people in my mini league. One of my mini leagues is in the chat, so he's obviously going to know what I'm doing and probably do the opposite to beat me. Russell or Hamilton for Limitless? Hamilton, what's your lineup? Oh, I answered that one. How do you feel about Antonelli, Albon, Hulk, Ocon, Stroll, McLaren, Williams? I think that's great for building some budget. Did you see Hulk starting from the pit? He's starting from the pit. Yep, I think that's great. More overtakes, not a bad thing. Would you Limitless or wildcard this team? Russell, Doohan, Hadjar, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg with McLaren, Mercedes. I'd probably wildcard Tom. What website is that? F1fantasytools.com. Harry O'Donoghue. That is the best fantasy resource for anyone engaged and playing F1 fantasy. We've got 400 of you in the chat. Hopefully, I haven't bored you to death yet in the first 45 minutes. We've probably got another hour or so. I'm going to wrap the stream up just a little early this time around. But hopefully by then we've got everything locked in. Worth a second transfer to put in Bortoletto for Hadjar or roll a transfer into Japan? I think that's a sideways trade, Kai. I'd just roll the transfer. Hold Bortoletto. I don't think it'll be much. It might be like 3 to 5 points difference between these two. Albon or Stroll? I think Albon for points, Stroll for... Oh, actually, no, maybe both. I think Albon absolutely for points. Yeah, I think I'd probably just go both. I'd probably go Albon over Stroll. If I've said Stroll over Albon, I should actually mean Albon over Stroll. Let's go. How are we going in the chip usage? So we've got 11% of you on Limitless, 40 on Wildcard, and 49 doing nothing. And I am one of the 49. And the poll, okay. I want to see if there's any news on Williams. Oh, Adam and Ewan tweeting about Hulk. Brilliant. This is the pricing formula. I think that's an old iteration of it, but that actually wasn't what I was trying to show. I'm just going to pull this back up. Missing the bow tie. I am. I wanted to do something nice for you guys last week and wear something pretty fancy for a fancy first race of the season, but nothing this week, unfortunately. Even a collared shirt's a bit too much for me to ask of myself. What do you think of Limitless? Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton? Yeah, Leonardo, I think that looks great. Doesn't the McLaren Williams with Hadjar Albon make up the -10? Yeah, it probably would. I didn't know it was for a -10, Pedro. So yeah, I think it would potentially. I have Russell, Behrman, Ocon, Hadjar, Bortoletto with McLaren, Mercedes. Frederico asks, thinking about using wildcard or changing those with a -10 for budget. I just use a -10. I think like, again, team dependent. I hate the cliche because everyone in fantasy sports says this. Fantasy football, fantasy Premier League, fantasy Formula One. I think wildcard is dictated by the price changes of your current team. And if you think there's a better opportunity in the lead up to a sprint race when you want to do a similar strategy to me and build budget, or you want to just use it another time, I know Ewan has talked about technical directives in Spain. That may be a time to use wildcard, but I think personally it's a -10 this week. Early in the season is perfectly fine. I took a -10 to make 3 transfers and then played a Limitless chip about an hour after. Are you saying the team I used last week is the team that will be used to calculate the growth? Yeah, Chris. So if you play a Limitless chip and you've made transfers in the same week before activating the Limitless chip, the transfers will auto erase. Is that the right word? Let me throw something up. I tweeted this earlier, so people could be across this. Here it is. This is for you, Chris. I don't want to promote. Leave me alone. I don't want to promote. I don't know if you guys could see that. Twitter just being Twitter. Hulk or Bortoletto? Hulk. For you, Zach. What do you think? Piastri, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Alonso, Stroll, Ferrari, Williams, Zhao. I'd probably think about trading out Alonso. for someone that's more likely to rise in price, perhaps Behrman, Sonoda if you can get to him. How about McLaren and Aston as constructor base for a budget below 99 million? Daniel, I think that's fine. Leapfrog, former world number one in F1 Fantasy, was just talking about Aston Martin as a constructor. Their threshold is not that high either. I think it is. I'm just going to jump off this screen. Aston Martin's threshold to increase is only 9 points for a maximum rise. So I think that's really nice for them. Hulk pit lane start. Yep, got that. Hulk, Hadjar, Bortoletto, Hadjar, Ocon or Behrman. Probably Ocon. Leclerc versus Russell in Limitless. Leclerc. Get rid of Hadjar or do him with the last transfer. I can't remember if I answered these questions. I'd go Hadjar. Sorry, I'm all over the shop in the chat. I'm losing my mark. I think F1 Tools have their expected points of Norris and Piastri too close, considering if Norris wins the Grand Prix, that's 7-point difference at least. Yeah, I think so, but I think they're also accounting for Piastri maybe qualifying fourth and scoring a few extra positions gained in overtakes. Again, I'm not the brainchild behind the simulations, Lucas, but the man who does it is a genius. Okay. I need to start being consistent with the ordering of answering questions so I don't jump all over the shop with you guys. I'm just going to start from here. Same team as you. Thoughts on switching Stroll for Behrman and taking Mercedes, McLaren, Artemis? Yeah, that's my second option, Artemis. If I didn't go the... let's go back to my team. If I don't go to Behrman, my other option would be... probably drop Hadjar back in there. Throw McLaren here, and that would give me enough to get Oliver Behrman again. So that's another team, Artemis, I'm thinking this weekend. Which would you pick? McLaren, Aston, Ferrari, Williams? I'd probably go McLaren, Aston. Hulk starting from the pit lane, that's correct. Should I swap Russell for Antonelli to get more budget, but will be a -10? No, I wouldn't take a -10 for Antonelli. McLaren, Aston, Piastri for budget. I think that looks great, Daniel. What do you think? I think I answered that already. If I went with the team that you had last week, have you made any changes? This is one of two different options. I'm going down J. Clark. So, yeah, one of two such approaches for this week. Do you think outdoing Bortoletto, Alonso in Hulkenberg, Ocon, Behrman for -10? Yeah, I think that looks nice, Liam. Piastri, Stroll, Ocon, Behrman, Hulk with McLaren and Williams. Looks good, Matt. -10, 3 transfers or eat a definite drop in budget. I don't know. -10 for 3 transfers and a definite drop. Yeah, sure, why not? I think it's I think it depends, right? If this is answering Silence in his question a couple of minutes ago. I'm gonna read Leap's question in just a second. Leap's comment in just a second. That's funny. -10 due to eat a definite 0.6. I think it depends what you value, points or budget. I think -10 to preserve 0.6 is not a bad approach. Just be wary that like anyone that is scheduled to go up in price, Hulkenberg, Stroll, they could still easily DNF. If Hulk DNFs, he could drop in price in one race week. It doesn't guarantee the price rise, but the odds are pretty positive in his favor. So just obviously keep that in mind when thinking about your team. Zane, yeah, I'd go Sounds to Albon in that situation. And Flame, yeah, I'd go Hulkenberg too. Yeah, I'd move out Behrman and get Hulkenberg, Flame. Any team with Bortoletto is a terrible pick. I mean, yes, I do agree with you, Andrew, but I would love to... Yeah, I'd obviously love to move him on. I just don't see it happening this week for my team. I've got a decent build for you. Please share it with me. Pick 2 out of Sonoda, Behrman, Stroll, Sonoda. So what are your 2 approaches for this GP? Like teams? Well, this is one of my two teams, but I think everyone's team is different. Oh, sorry, Andrew. Apologies. I thought you were talking to me, but that's why the chat is crazy. Using wildcard this weekend, should I go Piastri and Albon with McLaren Haas or Piastri Behrman with McLaren Williams? I want to maximize budget gains. Will I miss out on the points? No, I don't think you're missing out on the points because you've got McLaren and Piastri. I think they're both perfectly fine. I'd probably go Williams over Haas. I don't think the budget swings are going to be that significant between Williams and Haas. Should I swap out signs for Albon? Yes, you should. What is the best lineup to start this race? Oh, that's the dog. Apologies for any background noise. There's a dog in the room. And it's left. So there are two fantasy managers in this room. I need some advice from the dog. How risky is Antonelli and Albon over Piastri and Tsunoda? I don't think it's risky. I just think Piastri has a higher 2x upside down. So if you wanted to go down the Antonelli route, I think you've got more bandwidth in those two teams to definitely increase a little bit more. But I prefer the surety of points from Oscar Piastri, and 0.3 points, 0.3 million rise between Antonelli and Albon. Between Antonelli and Piastri is not that much to give me a little bit more reassurance that the points will be good this weekend. How about 3x Piastri? Not this weekend, Zane. Save the 3x for the second half of the season for those sprints. Piastri 2x or Limitless. Matt, I think you've got a great team. McLaren, Williams, Stroll, Behrman, Hulk. They're all going to rise. I just stick with that for this week. We're switching Mercedes, Ferrari for McLaren and Williams. Yeah, you could do that. I don't think I will Ruari, but I think it's a perfectly fine approach. Minus 20 points for wildcard. I'd go wildcard. I've used wildcard. Is Piastri, Hulk, Albon, Ocon, Behrman, McLaren, Williams? That's good for budget building, Zach. Yeah, love that. Russell, Hadjar, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Bortoletto, McLaren, Mercedes. Yeah, Bingus, that looks good to me. Should I change Hadjar for Ocon or keep him? I'd get Ocon, Lara if it's a 1-for-1 swap and you're not changing other parts of your team to do that. I think Ocon's a nice little pivot. This Q team is on the end screen of the score in Fantasy Tools. Please check. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Edward. Yeah, Glenn is absolutely doing the Lord's work, answering questions around pricing in the chat. So shout out to Glenn, as is Leaps as well. First week doing this. What's a good starting team? All right, let's start with a team of 100 million. Well, my team is 100. My team's 100.3 million. So you could do something like, you'd just be short. I mean, you could do something like this. Do I like 4 rookies plus Antonelli in the constructor? Absolutely not. I think if you're starting this week, I think McLaren and Williams is a nice little starting point with Piastri at the 2x, and then build the rest of the team around that. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Prudvi, minus 10 on wildcard. I think minus 10, but again, team dependent. 100 budget. What time will you choose? What team will you choose? Why don't we do that? Didn't I do that? Yeah. 100 million. Manual. Oh, yeah. 100 million. That's the highest scoring. But I'd probably go for, if that's pure points, McLaren Williams, pure budget, I'd go the Antonelli Albon. Actually, I will get, for people watching along at home, I will say my other two teams both have McLaren and Williams, so I'm not cowarding out on either of those two this week. This is my team 2, so Piastri, Albon, a bunch of back markers, McLaren Williams, and then team 3 is pure budget focus, so Antonelli is the 2x, McLaren Williams, and I activated the wild card on that because it had, I think, a 20 or 30 point week last week in Australia. What change? Seen conflicting reports. Ocon over Behrman is the obvious pick. Yeah, agree with you, Andrew. Best wildcard team. motto is the motivation for budget. In that case, I'd go for something like this, my team 2. Albon, Behrman, or Stroll, Yuki. I think Albon, Behrman for me, but again, I don't think it's all that far apart. McLaren, Mercedes, Piastri. I can afford that just because I had Stroll and Hulk last week. I got very lucky. Yeah, I got very lucky last week, I will admit. If Williams disqualified, who should we use as a second constructor? I think, actually, to be fair, some teams can afford Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes at 99.7 million, but you are running essentially five rookies. Don't love that. Do not love that. What's your thoughts on Piastri, Antonelli, Hulk, Behrman, Hadjar, McLaren, Haas? Yeah, Peyton, I think that looks good to me. Hadjar or Bortoletto. Hadjar. Is that final? No, this is not my final lineup, Vlad. I'm either doing this or I'm going the I feel like I'm going to regret it though if I go Ferrari. I just know I'm going to regret it if I don't go McLaren. I just know it. But I'm being greedy. I want the price rises. I'd probably just drop that. I want the price rises of Hulk and Stroll. But I know, I just have a gut feeling. One of these guys will DNF and it will just ruin my plan entirely. Let's go, Eston. Good to see you, man. Should I wildcard? I think, Oliver, that depends on your team, my friend. My week 1 was so bad I have to go with Antonelli budget wildcard. Yeah, that's so fine, Maverick. I think, like I said, I've wildcarded one of my teams, Antonelli, Albon, Hulk, Stroll. Like, that's perfectly fine. Last week's team, Piastri, Hadjar, Ocon, Hulk, Doohan, Mercedes, Ferrari. I think, Connor, think about moving out Doohan. See what you can do with what you've got available. Thoughts of cramming in Norris? I didn't go down the Norris path, did I? Oh, I keep going back to this screen. How would we fit Norris in on this team? It'd have to be a McLaren Williams though. That's a thing. So it's 1 hour until the deadline. So got a bit of time and thinking. McLaren Williams, I think I could get Behrman as well, couldn't I? Yeah. Like, that looks all right. That's not bad for 100 million with Lando. How did your team budget go up and down? It depends on the price changes week to week. Jensen Button in the chat. I'm going to guess it's not the Jensen Button, but you never know. You never know. We have 500 people watching, so thank you guys for stressing about F1 Fantasy as much as me. And doing this as a community. Hulk has to start from the pit lane better for overtakes. Yeah, absolutely, Isaac. If Stroll bins it, Rob, Lewis in the chat will be livid. 100% Lewis will be in the chat, livid about Lewis Hamilton. Oh, sorry, about Stroll. Yeah, for sure. If sticking with McLaren, Mercedes, Piastri, what will happen to the budget later on? Are you having to... Yeah, exactly, Yusuf. That's why. I mean, on face value right now, McLaren, Mercedes looks great, but I'm running 3 assets that are likely to drop in price. So I'm not overly excited about owning Behrman, Hadjar, and Bortoletto. I think for 1 week, the points would be great, but the budget would take a pretty big hit. That's my only concern. So that's why I'm more inclined to kind of stick with what I've got at the moment. Any news on Williams? I haven't seen anything. Ewan's live. The GOAT. Nothing. Oh, hang on. What's this? I think that's just the Hulkenberg. Yeah, it is. That's just the Hulkenberg. I don't know if you can hear a leaf blower outside. Hopefully not. Hulkenberg from the pit lane. Nothing obviously changing to the Williams guys. Let's see if there's anything on Twitter. Well, don't necessarily agree with that tweet. If anyone... Oh, there we go. It's almost as if Andrew knew I was about to refresh my newsfeed. Yeah, this is just by coincidence the former world number one in F1 Fantasy who has wildcarded this week into this team. Lots of budget building assets, and I think I agree. Like, you want to be naturally focusing on assets that are going to increase in price to have more flexibility down the line. So I love that approach from Leapsfrog. I don't see anything on Williams, but please let me know if you guys do. All right, back to the questions. If Stroll's bins it, I'm definitely doomed. Me too, mate. Me too. All right. After you make changes and confirm, can you change again? Yes, but you may need to take additional transfer penalties if you do. McLaren, Williams, Hadjar, Albon, Ocon, Stroll, Piastri. Oh, that's not bad. Harry, if you want to do limitless, I'd go limitless. I think McLaren, Williams are on the up. Albon, Stroll, Ocon, Piastri are also on the up. You're just carrying Hadjar, which is a bit of dead weight, but you're in a very lucky position compared to most. So I think that's not a bad shout for this week. Any news on Williams? Back to the grid? Nothing yet. Love the deadline streams. Thank you, Craig. Thank you so much. I'm glad people are taking something out of it, even if it is just me talking to a camera for 2 hours. I had Piastri, Russell, Hadjar. This is Greg's the champ. Piastri, Hadjar, Russell, Bortoleto, Doohan, McLaren, Mercedes, Williams, Triple DNF. Yeah, I think wildcard, Greg. Nice one. 50 points last week. Should I wildcard to gain budget or take the minus 20? I'd use your wildcard, Patricio. Bingus, great question. Why does it say Red Bull will rise 0.28? Because, yeah, I'll try and explain this quickly to you, Bingus, and other people that might have a similar question. This isn't naturally reflective of the pure price change increases week to week. The way that the pricing model is structured and the coding, not the coding, but the modeling that these guys do is that they try to give you a directional estimate of the price change, not a pure price change, because they can't predict the outcome of the race. If they could, then obviously we would see the exact price changes for each of these drivers. But because with how the modeling is done, they factor in, a number of different scenarios and simulations that pushes out an estimate price change for this weekend based on historical performance, obviously with the rolling average and other factors around qualifying and race simulation. So that's why you're not seeing a pure 0.1, 0.3, 0.2, 0.6 price change. Grid set, Williams is not moving. Yep. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Finals. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Atlassian Williams, technical regulations, video footage. The stewards have received a report from the technical delegate and heard from the team representative and have considered the following. Failure to provide the video files recorded by the wireless forward and rearward cameras. The competitor is fined £50,000 with $40,000 suspended. So it looks like there's no implication to Williams this week. So, or at least in the sprint race. So although there's obviously been a slap on the wrist, 50,000, what's that, like $5 to us normal folks? Sorry, $5 to them, not to us. But yeah, clearly just a fine. So that doesn't really change much at all. Williams will just start from where they are on the starting grid currently. Hulk starting from the pit now text because he changed the suspension of his car. A few limitless users love to see it. Yeah, just a fine. Would be good for overtake points. I mean, yes, maybe, but I mean, let's go to the starting grid. This is the starting grid. Obviously, if you're a Williams or an Albon owner, like in the real world, them starting at the backs is terrible. But fantasy-wise, you want drivers and constructors in good teams starting as far back as possible because you can just pick up those midfield and back market drivers with easy overtakes. So that is, I mean, not bad, but it could have been better, to put it that way. Could you put Fantasy Tools, the team that was on screen? McLaren, Mercedes, Piastri, Behrman, Bortoleto, Hadjar, Hulkenberg. Oh, that was my team, Edward. Yeah, I can do that for you. Let's do my team 1. Let's reset these. We want points. This team 1, Edward, is I think on the left here. What I had up on my F1 Fantasy Tools, F1Fantasy.com. Last week, Russell, Behrman, Ocon, Hadjar, Bortoleto, McLaren, Mercedes. Would you wildcard it? Maybe Federico. I wouldn't say it's necessary. I think I've answered that question before though. Oh, hey Luke. How are you, mate? Stressing about what to do. Think I'm on wildcard train. Just undecided on lineup. Either similar to your Norris build or Piastri with the likes of Sonoda. I personally, do we think, again, Norris had a great race last weekend. Do we think Lando Norris gets driver of the day, fastest lap, pole position, gets a bunch of overtakes in the sprint race? Maybe. I think he could certainly score close to 40 or 50 points this week. There's actually something I do want to look at. Statistics. Let's have a look here. Would it be a good idea to swap Mercedes for Ferrari if I have Norris and can't afford McLaren? Yeah, I think Ferrari are going to be better than Mercedes this weekend, DG. Good luck all, and remember to like the stream. Oh, thank you, Shane. Appreciate it, mate. Really appreciate it. Yeah, guys, again, you don't have to, no obligation to, but if it's not too much of a hassle, some love on the stream. 500 of you watching, always very appreciated for a like. Wait, they didn't put in SD cards. That's rather funny. SD cards? Greg's the champ. Love the stream and the videos, learning a lot. Second year F1 Fantasy and having a blast. Thank you, mate. I hope you are, because I certainly am as well. Frederico, I think I've answered your question at least 5 times. Last week, Russell, Behrman, Ocon, Hadjar, Bortoleto, McLaren, Mercedes. Would you wildcard it? 99.1 with 160 points from last week. Second guy with 98 points. No, I think that's perfectly fine to run this week. I just used 2 transfers, man. Norris 2X McLaren has Hulk, Ocon, Behrman, Stroll. It's good. Yeah, Dan, I'm good with that, man. And yeah, thanks, Glenn. I think you can. Yeah, I agree. I don't think you need to use a wild card. Just try and prioritize Hadjar or Bortoleto. Hassel Williams. Hey, big fella. I need your advice. Currently, Hamilton signs Hadjar, Doohan, Ocon for Williams. Would it be worth switching Williams to Aston and pocketing the extra cash? Maybe. Hadjar and Doohan. I feel like Hadjar and Doohan are probably more of a priority just because they're not going to rise in price this time around. Purpose of the wild card is to make wholesale changes to your team. Make wholesale changes to your team if you need to, take a minus 20 or so. I think it just gives you more flexibility to pivot, like we're seeing this week, into drivers and constructors that are likely to increase in price. So if you're seeing a change in the template, which we are at the moment, a lot of people are moving to McLaren and Williams. That's an optimal time to do it. You could do it before a sprint race weekend, before a limitless weekend, so you can carry that budget building into a second week, which is my plan at the moment. Or if we're seeing, a technical directive come into place, which Ewan has talked about on his channel a little bit. Like and subscribe if you want him to continue. Thank you, Frederico, sorry. I'll still continue, even if there are no likes, but you guys in the chat is what I really love, or who I really love engaging with. Oh, SD cards, right, in relation to Williams. Sorry, I thought that was, apologies. vids, LM vids. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think we're on the same page. Should I use wildcard to make 2 extra transfers? Andrew, if you're taking a -20, then yes. But if it's just the 2 standard transfers, then no. Aston and Albon or Williams and Stroll? Williams and Stroll for me. 99.9 budget. Final team, McLaren, Williams, Piastri, Alonso, Ocon, Tsunoda, Hülkenberg. I'd look at same boat as Josh. What changes do I make? Piastri, Ocon, Behrman, Bortoleto, Hadjar, Mercedes, Ferrari. I'd probably go... That's tough. It's kind of a tricky one because, like, do you want to use a wild card just to move out Hadjar and Bortoleto? Maybe. Like, what would... Like, if you went on wildcard Yash and you went McLaren, Williams, and I think this also applies to Zachariah's question too, like, what would you be considering? Williams are cleared. They actually are. Still only 15 likes. That's all right, Glenn. 15 likes more than I was expecting, so it's a win to me regardless. That was not meant to be sassy. Just 1 like is great, 100 likes is great, anywhere in between is great. Poll to see if people are using Limitless. Bobbit, I did have a poll up before. 40%, no. There were about 15% on Limitless. No, there were about 10% on Limitless. 40, what was it? It was 50% doing nothing, 40% on Limitless. Sorry, Bobbit, I'm butchering this. 50% of people in the stream were not activating a chip this weekend. 40% were activating Wildcard. 10% were activating Limitless. When is a good week to Limitless? What do we look out for? I think Miami, if you're not using Limitless this weekend, Marty, Miami's the next best time. Thinking Limitless this weekend. Yep, perfectly fine. Chris, Marnie, no wildcard, keep Piastri. Oh, I think you deleted that comment, so never mind. Got wrecked last week. I think we all did, brother. Bortoleto doing signs. Yeah, Patrick, consider taking a -10 to move out signs, Bortoleto and doing, or wildcard. Hey, Radio Paddock. How are you, mate? What change should I make? Williams asking. Piastri, Hadjar, Ocon, Albon, Stroll, McLaren, Williams. I think that's fine. That's pretty good. I like that a lot. I'll throw my team up just so you guys can... That's my team 1. This is my team 2. And this is my team 3. Don't you think we will need wildcard later in the season because we have it once, or is it fine because of the new pricing system? I think it's fine to save it. It's fine to use it. There's no like one right approach. I think a lot of people are using it merely to preserve value rather than from a strategy standpoint. But I do think we will see a lot of people use it, you know, in the first half of the year. What's the Limitless team? Who is 2x'd? I think I had this up before, didn't I? There we go. I'll throw this up. Currently have Mercedes, Ferrari with Piastri, Ocon, Behrman, Hulk, Hadjar. Should I keep the team wildcard or switch to a McLaren Williams setup? That's a tricky one. I think that's like the hardest one, Hater, where you've got Piastri, Mercedes, Ferrari. I think you could probably use a -10. Like, could you get to Behrman? I've lost my mark again. The chat disappeared. Hater, there we go. Should I keep the team wildcard or switch to a McLaren Williams setup? I think keeping the team's fine. You could take a -10. I wouldn't necessarily burn the wildcard. Sugar. I'm going to post my team quickly. Or at least draft a tweet. I'll post my team in probably 10 minutes. What's the Limitless team? Who's 2x? Norris. I'm going to try hold on to Limitless. Yeah, I agree with you. Go hit with 3 DNS. Wildcard was no brainer. 100% Yash. 100%. Oscar or Russell? Oscar. Thoughts on swapping signs, Williams and Hadjar for Antonelli, Kick, Behrman? Yep. looks good. What should you do for a limitless team? That is on the screen. Do you think using Williams could make it harder to change into a 2 A-tier constructor down the line? Not necessarily, Darren. I think for me personally, it's something that obviously requires a bit of pre-planning around whether to pivot into 2 A-tiers. But right now, Williams is perfectly fine for at least a few more weeks to pivot into something else. Yeah, Glenn, sorry, I thought I explained this earlier. This is my team 1. Yes, you're 100% right that Hajar and Bortoletto are dropping in value. There is a situation here where if I go down this path, I just get Ollie Behrman in. I think based on this chart here, he only needs to score 6 points for the maximum rise, 4 for a decent rise. So I think that's not a hard ask on a weekend. I think I'm just going to have to eat one of the drops though. It's going to be very tricky to get off both without using wildcard this weekend, Glenn. Hopefully that answers your question. Who's the best 2x for a limitless team? Lando Norris. I put Yuki on my more experimental team, but not the more serious one. That's fair enough, Pashi. Who would you give the 2x boost to in the limitless team? I just answered that. I got 2 extra Piastri and limitless. I think Norris, Piastri, Max Verstappen, all good. New sim dropped. Did they really? Why would they drop? Is it to do with the grid penalty in Hulkenberg? I'm going to guess it is. I'm going to guess it is. China, post-sprint qualifying V2. New sim's out, guys. New sim's out. So this is my team 1. So it's telling me to go to McLaren and Behrman for 220. It's like, I think that's the thing though. Like I'm on a much better wicket for price rises on my current Mercedes Ferrari. But the points for McLaren is exponential. Why Hamilton in the limitless and not Russell? Because I like Lewis Hamilton and I think he's more enjoyable to root for this weekend, given he's on pole in the sprint race. But I think Russell's great too. I think Hamilton's more enjoyable for me to support. All right, we are 30 minutes out from wrapping this up. I think still a little bit to get through, but just making sure I get all of your questions answered. And I also think, Adam, you and anyone else I'm missing? Rain, I think he's also doing a deadline stream. So all of the content creators are out in force today. Greetings from Brazil. Bernardo, thank you for coming in. Aston Martin or Haas for budget and points? I'm going to guess Haas has a better budget growth. I think Aston Martin for me personally. Number 1 in the world also went for Aston Martin, so I think that's perfectly fine. Ocon or Hulk? Ooh, is it? I want to say Hulk, just simply because the threshold again is much lower. I think I'm still I know I'm gonna regret this. I know it's not the right decision. Because Behrman actually, when I swap him out, Behrman's actually lower because he's qualified higher. Am I being greedy? Am I being greedy? That I'm not sure about. So, Behrman's projected to go up projected to score 0.9 points because he's starting higher. His price change is 0.11. Okay, so this is just for my team. Thoughts on Limitless, I think it's perfectly fine. When will you lock your team in? I'm probably going to lock it in now, and I'm actually getting cold feet on this Ferrari team. I very much am getting cold feet on this Ferrari team. That's my team at the moment. Anyone running into a tech issue while confirming their wildcard team won't let me confirm it. Try and activate the chip first, Kaveri. Bortoleto is my GOAT. I think he could be a lot of people's GOATs if he doesn't drop in price. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the team calculator quickly. So please excuse me. So for me, like, should I? Okay, so I guess the conundrum I'm faced with is that I'm going to own Hadjar, Behrman, and Bortoleto with Hulkenberg. Hadjar, Behrman, Bortoleto. The one thing I will say against Stroll is that he has DNF'd in the second race of the season for the last 2 years in a row. So that's why I'm a bit worried it's Lance Stroll. But that was at Saudi Arabia the last 2 years. So we will see. Oh, sorry guys. I'm so sorry. I didn't even have this up. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just going through the fantasy tool sims at the moment. Share screen. Yep. Sorry. That's the problem with doing it on one screen. So this is like ultimately where I'm stuck right now. Do I go keep Hadjar? Do I go Lance Stroll and McLaren and Oliver Behrman? Yeah, Glenn's absolutely acing the questions around Bortoleto and Hadjar in the chat, so I would direct Glenn. Honestly, Glenn, might have to get you on as a moderator. Do I take a -10 and swap Hadjar or Bortoleto? Current team: Ferrari, Mercedes, Piastri, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Hadjar, Bortoleto. Maybe. Is this worth it? Do I go this team? I'm really inclined to go with this team this week. The one reluctance is obviously not having Stroll's price rise and eating both Hadjar and Bortoleto, which I'm not overly excited about. Behrman, I think, will rise. Hulkenberg, I think, can rise. I don't know. I really don't know. Ocon, Behrman instead of Stroll, Bortoleto. Keeson, because Ocon and Behrman will rise more likely than Bortoleto. Bortoleto is a guaranteed drop. Ocon and Behrman have a chance to rise. Stroll probably should rise too. Do I need to wildcard? No, I don't think I need to wildcard. Absolutely not. I feel like I'm being a coward, and I think the problem is with price changes is that you obviously want to build these up earlier in the season, but at the same time, McLaren on a sprint race weekend almost feels foolish to ignore entirely, which is why I feel like I have to go McLaren this week. What's everyone saying? What's Rain saying? Current 3 teams. He's going Piastri. Oh no, that's a pin team. He's done nothing. All right. I think I'm going to go the McLaren route. Last minute change. I think it's more just the fact that McLaren looks so good. Am I going to ruin my budget though? No news on Williams. There isn't any news on Williams. They're starting as per their qualifying result yesterday. Why the definite? It's not a definite no. I'm probably heading into the stream. I was pretty high on high on Ferrari. The reluctance here is running Bortoleto and Hadjar, which will both drop again in price. And I don't want to, like, in a situation, I don't want to get caught in kind of like a revolving door of just price drops. And moving off one of them, I think, could do well. This could really screw me, hey. Sorry, guys, I'm just having a mental breakdown. But thinking about price is key right now. Yeah, I agree, Glenn. I agree. I know. Which is why the team on screen is tempting for points, but for budget, it's not. See, but is it the right week to pick up McLaren? Yeah, maybe, but my budget will take a pretty bad hit. That's all. And like the gains I made last week would be erased pretty quickly. That's the only thing. Yeah, I know. I know Lewis qualified first. It's tough. Why not limitless? Because I don't need to this week. Make sure I'll just go through any other questions. I'm probably gonna have to wrap it up in 15 minutes because I'm laughing. I probably will be when my team has 5 DNFs. Bortoleto might be my GOAT after FP3. Should I swap? What about Ocon, Behrman, Hulkenberg, Bortoleto, Piastri, Ferrari, Mercedes? Yeah, looks good. Sonoda and avoid by qualifying that high and not getting overtake points. Probably, yeah. I'm not super high on Sonoda this week. Interesting choice of Hulkenberg considering what he did in sprint quali, but he is starting at the back, so he has positions gained. Swap out Stroll and Ocon for Yuki and Hulk. Yep, sounds great. I think you should get rid of Bortoleto and Hadjar and return back to them after 2 teams when they're DNFs in Australia. When they're Yash. That's why I'm. Yeah, that's why Yash. I'm reluctant to have Bortoleto and Hadjar. I just think they're sinking ships and they're not going to be. Yeah, like I think I've made up my decision, so I'm gonna back out of this. I was on the edge. It feels crazy to go without McLaren. It feels crazy because everyone's running them. Their ownership is surprisingly not that different to Ferrari. Because everyone has McLaren and Williams. Like, everyone has McLaren and Williams. I just know if Stroll DNS, it's going to ruin my weekend more than if I had Ferrari and McLaren did well. Like, I'm keeping Stroll for the price rise, not for the points. Like, he's... Oh, goodness. I said to myself heading into the deadline, I wouldn't have a breakdown on stream. And here I am talking to myself like a madman. And you guys are keeping me sane in the chat. All right. So I think I'm just going to go with this. This is pretty much a lock for me. And look, hang on. Next week, like hypothetically, of course, like if I went like next week, I also want to try and think like a week ahead here. But no, I'd have to get rid of Stroll and I'd have the 3 lowest priced assets. But I do have... Yeah, no, I'm not going to talk myself back into Ferrari. Back into McLaren. Oy. Stroll GOAT. Yeah, GOAT of the DNFs. Anyway, I know Stroll is going to ruin my weekend. You can clip this for all you want, guys. I just feel like this team here is best for price rise. I don't want to be greedy with points. But I also don't want to be greedy with price rise. Anyway, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lock it in the next 5 minutes. I'll answer your questions and I'll wrap it up in 10. You think Yuki will go up after the next race? Yeah, Alex, I think it's a high possibility. Interesting choice of Hulkenberg. I think I answered that one, didn't I? Thoughts on Gasly? I think he'll be fine. He does need to score a lot though. He needs to get 13, which is not outside the realms of possibility on a sprint, but I think there are slightly better options around the track. Can you show a suggested wildcard team? I think I had that earlier, didn't I? Here we go. That's my wildcard. That's a suggested wildcard team for a bit of budget, a bit of points. Williams has not received a penalty. Why not wildcard? I don't want to wildcard it. I want to save it. I go through my thought process for saving my wildcard in my final thoughts video. Can you please show the chip you selected? I haven't used the chip. Have not used the chip. It's just one transfer, rolling the other 3 next week. Yeah. But I'm also like, I made the decision. I made it, I guess, a decision last year where I had enough money to move into a McLaren team, and I decided to chase price changes, and it backfired. So that's why I know I'll be able to get to Piastri McLaren. I just feel like right now I'm already ahead on budget, so why wouldn't I continue to kind of maximize that advantage as much as possible? All right. All right, I'll get through the last few questions and we'll wrap things up in the next 5 minutes. So I shouldn't pick Stroll if I'm starting the season this week. Yeah, I think you could. I think he's perfectly fine. Tintin on the Limitless. Do you think McLaren and Ferrari are best for this week? Yeah, I think McLaren and Ferrari you should be using if. Yeah, you're right. That's right. Nabadip, that's right. It was differential. I went different. Well, I didn't go differential intentionally. I went down the Hulkenberg and Stroll route because I thought their experience would hold me in good stead in the wet, and it paid off. And I think this week, trying to go for a kind of a well-rounded budget building team, and I think this is not too bad. Stroll and Tsunoda or Albon and Behrman? Albon and Behrman. Lavan. I'm not a fan of Stroll, but he has impressed thus far this year. I think he should be okay as it's early in the year. You're right. China, he ran into the back of Ricciardo last year, but I'm not going to let that kind of dissuade me too much. And how much does Behrman need to score to go up in value this time around? Let's find out. Shall we? I think it's like 5 points, isn't it? Yeah, 4 to 6 points. So it's not a huge ask. Why not Ocon instead of Stroll? Because Stroll has a lower threshold. And I also a lower threshold to increase. Like, put it this way, Behrman to Hulk on this chart just need to avoid a DNF. That's all they need. They just need to avoid a DNF and they'll rise the maximum. That's the only kind of situation on sprint weekends where there's more points to score where they drop that much. Wildcard team, I don't have enough for Albon, keep Tsunoda. Yeah, Oscar, I think that's fine. All right, I think that's it. I'm gonna lock this team in. No more agonizing. I think the thing is, this was the team I landed on by Monday, Tuesday. I was like, this is it. Price gains, balance. The only thing that obviously terrifies me is McLaren 91 projected. Do they break 100? I think it's possible. Okay. Look, if worse comes to worse, I can just wildcard. But I'm trying to make the most of having assets rise in value that I had before everyone else did. So that's kind of why I'm on this team. Okay, I'm pressing the continue button. One trade, rolling 3 into Japan. That is it. Lock it in. Okay, confirm changes. Isaac Hadjar, Ollie Behrman, 1 change, done. Why you keep Bort, not Hadjar? I couldn't afford. I had to keep Bortoletto. I couldn't afford moving out Hadjar. I would have kept Hadjar. Refresh that Fantasy Tools page, mate. Yeah, I think I did, Jeremy. Did I not? The budget building one or the team calculator one? I think it's got the latest sims. V2 SQ. Pace a bit more close to the sims. DNF's closer to the betting odds. Yeah, next week you get 3 transfers. Exactly, Sarah. That was the other Sarah. Sorry if I've mispronounced it. I think, I think having 3 next week will be huge. Okay. Well, we're in it to win it, right? Budget builder updated with Hulk penalty. Oh, got it. Right. You're spot on, mate. So, what's his threshold now? Like 11. I don't think that changes much, does it? What was his threshold before? Like his odds of increasing 83, and where was it before? 90. It's gone down? I thought it I thought it would have gone up if he's starting in the pit lane. Because he's... I don't know if I agree with that. Anyway, that's locked. So I'm going to post that quickly, and then I'll have to skip out in 5 minutes. Nope. That's not it. This is it. Let me just refresh this. So yeah, this is my team 1 for this week, guys. Team 2 is my Piastri Albon. So that's, I think, kind of, if I was on a Williams build, I'd be aiming for something like this. And if I was on a pure budget building approach, I'd be on something like this. Oh. So yeah, I'm just going to fire this off on Twitter so people can see if they're not on the stream. Yeah, look, 2 mental breakdowns on stream in the last 2 weeks, right? Lucky you guys. But I think, yeah, I'm honestly happy with the decision. I think it was, you know, again, as I said, a matter of preserving budget. I feel like I've got very lucky with already owning Hülkenberg and Stroll, and if I can keep that momentum into 1 more week, then I think it'll be, I think it'll be good. I think I've always been someone that's had a disadvantage when it comes to building budgets. So I think now that I've got, you know, a little bit more to start the year off, it feels good to kind of continue that. So yeah, that's the logic. I'm just going to fire this off, wrap up the stream, answer your last questions, and you've got my undivided attention now. Okay. Opted against for budget. Team 2 looks like a damn good team. Yeah, it does. Okay. The tweet is off. Let's get the last few questions done, guys. Thank you for talking me off the... Well, I didn't think you talked me off the McLaren edge, because I think McLaren are going to be unbelievably talented, this team. Which is the website to check budget of the team? Kevin, that is f1fantasytools.com. Okay. Is Behrman a better buy than Ocon? I think 1 for 1, I'd probably take Ocon. Thank you, Oscar. Appreciate the comment. Between Albon and Sainz, who is better? I think if it was same starting price, same first race of the season, I'd go Sainz. But right now, I take Albon over Sainz. Yeah, we go. Here we go, Jess. Love that. We're in it to win it this week. What do you think of Piastri, Gasly, Hülkenberg, Bortoletto, Stroll, McLaren, Williams for a -10? Denver, I think that looks great. Between Albon and Sainz, who'd take Albon? How's the point system work in sprint weekends? What's the deadline? The deadline is in 18 minutes. So lock your fantasy team in now. You get points for the sprint race, but no points for sprint qualifying. I'm backing the strategist. Hey, Finno! How good? Finno in the chat. Thanks for the stream. Thank you, sir. Chat between Albon and Sainz, who to take? I think I said Albon. Use wildcard or take a -20. Wildcard, why not Russell? I think Russell's great. It just doesn't work for my team. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate the kind words, sir. Is it worth taking a -10 to get rid of Hadjar? Possibly. Depends kind of who's the swap for. So yeah, that's my team 3. Yeah, so anyway, I think I got to all the questions. I'll give you guys 60 seconds more to drop anything in the chat last minute, but this is it. That's that. Yeah, post is up. Questions are done. The chat is on fire, and we've got, I think the numbers are down. 319, but that's perfectly fine because we're wrapping things up anyway. But I would suggest dropping over to Ewan, F1 Fantasy Pole Position. I think Rain's doing a stream. I think Adam's doing a stream. So yeah, check those guys out. And I'll knock out these last few questions. New fan here. Recently replied to your post. Need advice on who to use. I'm pretty new. Sorry, I'm not looking at Twitter right now. IDK random, so I won't be able to get to that until after the deadline. So just post the question here, please. Albon and Williams or Antonelli and Aston? Albon and Williams. Yeah, Albon and Williams. Is it worth taking -10 or using a wild card? Team dependent, I think -10 for this week's fine. Williams to Alpine. I'd be going Alpine to Williams, as in I'd be bringing in Williams. Before you log off, what is the reason to go for Lance Stroll? Because his price is going to, hopefully if he doesn't DNF, go up again, 0.6. Owning Hulkenberg and Stroll is purely budget focused at this point in the season. What do I do with Sainz? Sell him for Albon. Love the stream. Thank you, Yash. That's a really nice comment. Let's get this show on the road. Drinks aren't going to drink themselves. Yep. Okay, you're right, Fino. All right, I got to run to a birthday, guys, this afternoon. And a friend of mine is holding me accountable to leave in the chat. So I'm going to wrap this up. But as I said, you know, as cliche as it sounds, a like on the channel, a like on the video would be honestly very much appreciated. So drop that there. I'll be back not next week, but the week after for another deadline stream. But I also will have plenty of videos between now and Japan on the channel there. So stay tuned for more exciting news and content. But in the meantime, guys, good luck with your teams this weekend. And I will see you all very soon.